Do you remember back in 2020, there was an attempted coup of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro? It was called Operation Gideon, the bold attempt to oust Nicolas Maduro from power in Venezuela. The operation ultimately failed and was painted as a group of rogue mercenaries, many Venezuelans, some Colombians, and former U.S. Green Berets, who acted completely on their own. The operation seemed straight from a spy novel. On May 3rd of 2020, two boats carrying about 60 men, mostly Venezuelan dissidents, attempted to land on Venezuelan shores, take control of an airstrip, and seize Maduro and other regime figures. The operation failed drastically. Venezuelan security forces had intercepted, many were captured, some killed, and the incursion collapsed. Maduro's government broadcast the confession of two captured American former Green Berets and denounced the raid as a U.S. Colombia-backed aggression. However, the U.S. government insisted they had nothing to do with it. Well, one of the central figures in the plot says that's not true. He claims the mission was not just the work of renegade contractors acting on their own, but that it was, in fact, a U.S. government-backed and supported operation. And tonight he's here to tell us his side of the story. Jordan Goodrow is a decorated former U.S. Army Green Beret and combat veteran who served with distinction in the 10th Special Forces Group. Born in Canada, later naturalized as a U.S. citizen, Goodrow began his military career in the Canadian Armed Forces before enlisting in the U.S. Army, where he rose to the rank of Sergeant First Class. Over a 15-year career, he deployed multiple times to both Iraq and Afghanistan, leading Special Forces teams in counterterrorism, reconnaissance, and direct action missions. Goodrow earned several commendations for valor and service, including 3 Bronze Stars, and held numerous elite qualifications such as the Special Forces Tab, Ranger Tab, Combat Infantryman Badge, and Parachutist Badge. After retiring, he founded the Florida-based private security military services company called Silvercorp USA. And in late 2019, Silvercorp signed an agreement with the opposition Venezuelan leader, Juan Guaido, to plan the operation to remove Maduro. In fact, we have some of the audio of the call, and here you can hear Juan Guaido himself signing off on this.
Presidente, ¿cómo está?
Buenos días.
Muy buen día. Agradecerle el contacto. Estoy con Jordan, que es el representante de la empresa. Ya usted tiene los documentos y bueno, él habla inglés. He speaks English, so if you want to say something to him, I think.
Hi, Jordan. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Mr. President. Nice to meet you.
Thank you for the effort, for the time, and all the effort for our cause.
My pleasure.
Yeah. As I, como le dije antes, bueno.
Si quiere hablar inglés, tú sabes.
Yeah. As we speak before, we have several meetings during these past weeks, and I think we're ready to sign. You have the contract in your hands, yeah. And the thing that we have to do is sign. He wants to see while you're doing it. We said before that we were having these documents by scan it, so we can print it here and sign it back. Okay.
Okay.
And I think that we'll be ready to start the whole thing. Okay.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Are there any questions, Mr. President, concerns? I know.
A lot of concerns, but we will do the right thing for our country, and we are in a very hard humanitarian crisis, and we have to resolve this situation. Okay.
Right.
So with Sergio, all the confidence to him. So anything you want to ask or translate to me with Sergio or with Felix.
Perfect.
Okay. Well,
You want to sign?
yeah, you can do the sign. Okay, he signed in every page.
Okay, so Jordan says not only was the Venezuelan opposition leader Guaido involved, but the president of Colombia, Ivan Duque, was as well. Jordan says he had a phone conversation with Duque himself, where Duque sanctioned the use of Colombia's land and sea territory for the operation. More provocatively, however, Goodrow claims that he acted with tacit approval from the highest levels of the U.S. government, including Vice President Mike Pence, and says that agencies like the CIA and FBI sabotaged or undermined the mission in their civil war with the White House. Now, the official government side of this story is that maybe there was a mission, but eventually everybody backed out of the deal and Jordan still acted on his own. Now, this has led to serious consequences for Jordan. He was investigated by U.S. authorities for weapons trafficking, and in July of 2024, he was arrested in New York and indicted on charges including exporting military hardware without proper licensing. He has been released on bond and is pending trial, which is scheduled for February. Again, we're here to hear his side of the story. That is coming up here on The Kim Iverson Show. Jordan Goodrow, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kim.
Let's start off with the charges you're facing. They're pretty serious. What are the charges against you? And more importantly, what are the consequences of these charges?
Yeah, it's ITAR trafficking and I guess weapons trafficking. And I'm not too sure about the significance. It's federal charges, so probably pretty steep.
I mean, do you know what you'd be facing? Is it prison time? Is it like, what would you?
I would think so. Yeah, I would think prison time.
But you don't know how long?
No, I'm not worried about the trial, if it goes to trial at all.
Okay. Well, you seem pretty calm for somebody.
Yeah, let me just clarify that. I've read the discovery. So has my legal team. I mean, the level of government involvement in this whole thing and agency involvement, CIA, Colombian intelligence, FBI, it's staggering. Furthermore, it's pretty clear once you read all of it that what exactly happened, and we're seeing it in the news right now with the Russia collusion hoax and all of the things that happened back then. It's pretty clear that there was a civil war in the White House, and me and my team got caught in the middle of it.
Okay.
So,
That still seems like a pretty. I mean, gosh, going up against the government, that seems pretty tough. Mostly because, like the government can do whatever the government. I mean, they just get away with whatever they want. Yeah, and it's like if you're the patsy, if you're the fall guy, if you're the scapegoat, I just don't know how you battle the government when they make a decision. Nope, we're going to completely scapegoat it or make this person the patsy or whatever. It's like, how do you? It's almost like they could fabricate any evidence. They could hide evidence. They could say things are classified. They can, they could do all kinds of things in order to just. And that's what I'd be so afraid of.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They do anything they have to do to win. They have an unlimited budget. They can cheat. They can lie. They can steal. This is Mike Pompeo's phrase. Obviously talking about the CIA. They can do anything they want. They have all the cards. And it's not fair at all. There is no fairness in just the judicial system, which is ironic because a guy like me, I take my oath of the Constitution. And back then, when I was just a soldier banging out in the GWAT, I believed that the Constitution was intact.
Right.
After going through this legal process, I know for a fact that it is not intact. It's not. There's still good people in the system. There's still good judges, and there's still good, there's still good people doing work. That said, the institution in and of itself has been eroded over the course of decades.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you think there's enough discovery, before we get into the whole story, you think that there's enough discovery to implicate members of the U.S. government to say they were totally the ones who told you to go and do this, like they were, or that gave the approval to go do this, like they were very much, this was a U.S.-backed operation?
Absolutely. I mean, you can look if you look on Pacer and you look at, there's a lot that's redacted, but there were people from the very first meeting that I was in. Well, in the very first meeting, you had Lester Toledo, you had George Betancourt, who are CIA assets, and Venezuelan opposition strategists under Leopoldo Lopez/Juan Guaido. And then you had another gentleman who actually, then you had head of White House ops. He's the individual who recruited me in the first place. And then you had somebody in there who was actually told the truth on his 302s and said, yes, in fact, this we were talking about a coup. There was no bones about it. We weren't talking about humanitarian aid. It was all
Right.
about a coup. And then this culminates, obviously, fast forward to where the contract is signed with Juan Guaido. I mean, it's in plain English. It's all written out. Juan Guaido's not going to make that deal unless he knows for a fact that the U.S. is on board. Fast forward, I want to say it was like, a month or two, and then he's standing up, the State of the Union, and everybody's, standing up, waving and whatnot. So it's like, come on, are you kidding me? And I'm just scratching the surface. We can go down this rabbit hole all day long. I can talk about how he and I had conversations with who had assets, Venezuelan/CIA assets in my camps right before we launched. We're giving positional data to DNI. Well, who was in DNI at the time? It was a guy named Rich Grenell, right? Rick Grenell, who, the guy who just got the hostages out of Venezuela. Well, if he's so tight with Maduro, why didn't he get my hostages out 4 years ago? My 2 Green Berets. Why did he do it back then? He was the guy. He was listening to our, he was reading, he was reading those coordinates out. He knew where we were.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is this: somebody has to do an investigation on this. And right now, in the White House, this implicates people on both sides of the aisle, right? This is pretty obvious, and the level of suppression of this story in and of itself, right? I mean, watch what happens after this concludes. You're going to have intelligence agency, psyop rooms just going in the comments, talk about how this guy's crazy and all X, Y, and Z, and this happens every time I go on a podcast. Is the messaging is just flooded the comment section. So, I mean, I can do this.
Well, hello CIA then, if you're watching. Hey guys.
Every time I post on X, that's, there's 5 people, or there's 10 people who immediately see it. And those are intelligence agency, Department of Justice. Oh, who, by the way, the Department of Justice, the investigate or the indictment came from their intelligence. What's it called? It's called the their intelligence. I guess it's the division that handles classified information, National Intelligence Department or whatever it is. Well, this individual is John Eisenberg. John Eisenberg was a colleague in the White House and a contemporary of Keith Schiller. That's the conflict of interest, right?
Right.
And although he did not initiate the prosecution, he certainly adopted it, and he certainly knows who I am, and he knows this case.
Okay.
So the connection.
Let's kind of break it down a bit from the beginning on this. For one, I think there's no doubt the U.S. government has made it completely clear that they had and still have every desire and wish to take out Maduro from power in Venezuela. That's not a secret, right? So it's interesting that it seems reasonable to conclude that they were 1,000% behind your operation. I mean, totally reasonable to conclude this. And it wouldn't even matter who was president, because you're right, it's both sides. When Juan Guaido went to the State of the Union, that's the one thing they all agree on, Democrats and Republicans, is taking Maduro out of power in Venezuela. So yeah, I think it's a reasonable starting point to assume that the U.S. government was probably involved in this. However, their defense is, we weren't. You just acted on your own and you had your own motivations. And they're saying that your own motivations were monetary, right? That there was some big payout or you would have gotten a piece of, was there a bounty on Maduro at that time? I know there is one now, but certainly there was maybe an oil deal that they were claiming.
When I started the operation, there was no bounty. I was recruited into this. I didn't just one day wake up and say, "Look, I need to go, liberate Venezuela." I was pulled into this by people who were very powerful people in the White House, several of them, and I got passed along into. So I was part of a group of very powerful people who linked me up with people working in the government, in very powerful positions in the government. And these individuals were facilitating my operation. They were going to the National Security Council. They were talking to individuals, trying to figure things out, trying to, get me. One point I asked for naval support. I got it. 2 destroyers, and a destroyer, much like you see right now in the Caribbean. I got it.
Mm-hmm.
This is documented in 302s. This individual admits it, right? So it's, it goes far deeper than me just talking about it. The evidence is there. All the 302s are there. And the truth is, a lot of this is on the internet. It's just people, don't do the reading. There's a journalist, investigative journalist who's been studying all the discovery for about 9 months. His name's Ryan Morgan. He can't even get his story published, right? Because the level of suppression on this is, I've never seen it.
Yeah, the issue with the government, I think, is they often do things, like the CIA in particular, do things that allow them to have plausible deniability, right? So, well, we weren't directly involved. And that's one thing Mike Pompeo even said about this. Rather than just saying we weren't involved, he says we weren't directly involved. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean if you weren't directly involved? That means you were indirectly involved. So, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that, this is like the MO of governments around the world, plausible deniability. But you're saying that there's still enough evidence, even with their attempt at plausible deniability, to say, no, you guys were involved, because how did I suddenly get destroyers?
Sure. How does a guy like me get access to the recognized president of Venezuela? How do I get a contract signed with the recognized president? How does that happen? I'm just a soldier, right? And this is something the movie really didn't do well. They didn't clarify how I was able to do it. I mean, the movie had its own agenda, right?
Okay.
Money came from where it came from. When you read the reviews on it.
Just so that we're clear, we're talking about Men of War. This is a documentary that was just put out on Amazon Prime. I watched it. It's interesting. I thought it was interesting, but you're saying there's what was the issue with it?
Fundamentally flawed in several areas. They didn't talk about my background. I am a human intelligence operative. I mean, half of my training in special operations is human intelligence. The only way somebody gets in the room with presidents and diplomats and people of this level, this is the president's inner circle, is if you're trained, is if you understand how to navigate the tactical, strategic, logistic, the business, the human intelligence layers. This is just, a regular soldier. And this is what they tried to paint me as in the media, was just this lone gunman, crazy mercenary guy. Well, why is, somebody working in Mike Pence's office who has access to the National Security Council, why is this individual who is an ex-Green Beret, why is he dealing with me? Why is he answering my RFIs? Why is there constant communication over Signal with me and this individual? And why are there such prolific, I meant incredibly prolific lawyers in DC who are facilitating all of this, right? When the contract was signed, I had a meeting with 3, powerful individuals who worked in the White House or worked in the government, 2 of which were very powerful lawyers in DC. And I have the White House log. The ex-head of White House operations was meeting with the president a few hours after my contract was signed, a few hours after I had met them. So, listen, give me the classified information. Why? What do you have to hide?
Right.
Give me all the classified information. Let's go. And here's the game.
Mm-hmm.
No, seriously. If you have nothing to hide, give it up. The game is this: they want me to go to jail so that when I'm in the middle of pretrial punishment, I'm no longer incentivized to push and to play the game of trying to get the classified information, because they just stall it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, let's go back to the Constitution that I fought for my entire life and watched my friends and buddies die for. That I got shot for and blown up for. And you're with a straight face going to say, oh no, yeah, the Constitution, we're going to do this and that because it's based on the Constitution. Come on, man. Give me the classified information. Mm-hmm. I'm not running. I can run. I can never be seen again. I choose to be here because I want the truth. Period. Because my men who died deserve it. I don't care about who it implicates, left, right. It doesn't matter to me. I did my due diligence and I did my job. I protected the commander-in-chief. I protected his intent and I fulfilled his intent. And let's speak for a second, if I may, on the true intent of the operation. This is where the movie fell short. The whole point of that operation was to have 3 boats, 2 military-style boats that would land. They were not the main effort. The main effort was a link up. Over the year and a half that I did this operation, I developed assets within Venezuela who were very close to, obviously, the three individuals in charge at the time, one of which, Nicolas Maduro. It took a lot of time, patience, but I did gain access and placement to these individuals, and these individuals had access to task and maneuver units. That is to say, they were able to alert units and task these units to do 90% of the lifting, right? And I get it. Listen, regime change, everybody hates regime change. Got it. So do I. I think countries should govern themselves largely. That said, I mean, we had help from the French when we fought 1776. We did. Sorry,
Sure.
they helped us.
Right.
And furthermore, why shouldn't I help these guys with regime change? This was never about, if you believe that 60 dudes landing on the shores were going to somehow cut through 500,000 regulars and Cuban bodyguards, that's insane. And so the real point of this op was a link up with the assets that I had surrounded, in and around Maduro, and activating them, and they would do the heavy lifting. So essentially, This is Venezuelans liberating Venezuela.
Right.
Understand?
Right.
And this is a stark comparison to, and this is a stark comparison to Eric Prince's plan, which was invasion. This is a stark comparison to what we all think might be happening in the next few weeks, which is invasion. I'm not interested in bloodshed. I'm interested in using my mind to solve a problem. And it's a tricky problem. But at the end of the day, I want Venezuela to determine and chart its own course. I just want people to be free. This is evidenced by the motto instilled in us in the Q course. I mean, we are Green Berets. We believe de oppresso liber, free the oppressed, right? Do we believe that, or is it just some tagline? No, we believe it. I believe it. And this is what I tried to accomplish. I just didn't account for the fact that the CIA and the Trump administration were in a civil war.
At that time, yeah. And maybe still are, actually. Okay. Let's break down, how did it begin? Who contacted you? How did the whole, you're just sitting there, you're doing your thing, and suddenly, how did this begin?
Yeah, I was trying to solve school shootings, and I had successfully templated it in a college, and I think like a Christian school or something.
Actually, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but let's go back a little further from there.
Sure.
So tell us, because you're talking about, you're no longer in the military at this point. You now have your own company, a private company. Right. So let's go from the military background. Tell us a little bit more about that, and then how you ended up in your private company and what you were doing. And then we'll start it. Then how did it begin?
Okay. Yeah, no, I started in the Canadian Army at 17, and I loved it. And so it was always what I was going to do. My grandfather, fought in World War I, Vimy Ridge, war hero. I had uncles who were in World War II. I think one of them landed in Juno Beach, the beach north of Omaha, really tough beach. Fast forward, I went to the United States, and I went into the U.S. military. Got my Ranger tab, special operations, did another. We call it the Long Walk, and that's another unit. But largely, most of my deployments are JSOC. I did the Benghazi mission to try to help those guys. Bassler Stevens, we weren't too late. We could have helped those dudes. That said, that's beyond the scope of this. And so when I get out, I sustained a lot of combat injuries and whatnot, as guys like me do. It's rough sports. I loved it. It was awesome. So I get out and I start doing something, in the training. And again, my training is it's twofold. It is strike force centric, and it is human intelligence operations. And one of the units I was in, which is a pretty awesome unit, is called the CRIF. They do this really well simply because they belong to two commands, JSOC when they deploy, and then just regular special operations command. But when I get out, guy like me, I still want to solve problems. I'm given all this knowledge, all this training. You're this guy who can leap tall buildings with a single bound. The one thing in the movie is like Jason Bourne. Like, come on, man, Jason Bourne. It's not close to dudes like us. We're real. But the reality is, you get out and you want to keep, progressing, right?
Right.
And so I do operations that a guy like me does, clandestine style operations in other countries. I'm not a contractor. When you get contracted by the U.S. government, it's kind of like, you're like the Wagner Group. You are kind of mercenaries, but you're working for a country, and you're probably stood up by that country. Same as a lot of these other entities, right? So you have safety nets. The CIA has safety nets. The highest level U.S. military unit has safety nets. I mean, you're not really out there operating on your own. But the things that I was doing, I was operating on my own. There's no safety nets at all. You are not affiliated with anybody. Nobody's coming to save you. And so it's really dangerous stuff. I came back.
But who would hire you for these dangerous missions?
Largely, different companies in different countries and whatnot, interested parties, and in seeing certain events play out internationally and whatnot. Fast forward to.
Can I just ask, how is that not illegal? I mean, I'm not, I'm not, this isn't about you, this question, because, I understand that was your job and that's what you knew and that's what you transitioned to and you were able to do it. And so then you did it. But I just don't know how a private company could go and hire somebody to go kill people in another country and that's legal. I mean, isn't that murder?
So quite simply, there are, let's be honest, of all the countries, and there was a country called the Rendon Group, I think that it's TRG for short, but we have all these countries around us. It's not just these contracting companies, it's large companies, Cameron. These companies have projects in them, TSSCI projects that are run by CIA, that are run by intelligence agencies. This is not conjecture, right? You have Skunkworks who are providing, all of these UAP, all of these strange, technologies and whatnot. Let's not kid ourselves. This is how the CIA operates in countries now, right? For my part, if you...
So you're saying that, just so that we're clear, so you're saying that like a large corporation that's doing business in South America, let's say it's like a big oil company, right? And you're saying that inside of the oil company is like a division of the CIA?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying they have advisors. So let's do it like this. This is simple and this is relevant. So the movie that they made about me, Men of War.
Yeah.
If you look at the reviews, there's two outlets that reviewed that. One was Rolling Stone. The other was Variety. Now, Variety and Rolling Stone are owned by Penske. There were some pretty bad remarks about me by the company who distributed the film in Variety. I mean, he really took shots at me. I've never even met this guy. These two entities, under the parent group of Penske has advisors who are affiliated with the CIA. This is a CIA affiliated company, right? And so this is, you look at the work that Elon Musk did with Doge, the USAID stuff, all that money that was flowing into, the pockets of Juan Guaido, Leopoldo Lopez, guys like that. Where's that money? Nobody knows. Right. Juan Guaido was being sued in Delaware. Where's that in the news? It's not. Suppressed. Raytheon and 3 other companies are suing him because they Guaido stiffed these companies to the tune of billions. Why is Juan Guaido running around Miami carefree?
Okay, well, I mean, this makes sense. So there's the CIA is kind of inside of these in these companies, or advising these companies. So then these companies hired you when you left the military officially, and you're a private citizen at this point, but highly trained private citizen. So so companies would hire you, just so that I'm clear, companies would hire you to go kill people in other countries.
No. I don't kill people. You have to understand, I'm not interested in, bloodshed and whatnot. It's nuanced, right? Like, listen,
sometimes that happens.
Sure it does. But it happened in 1776. A lot of Americans died, but we have our freedom, right?
Right, but that was a war. I'm just trying to figure out how, like, Chevron, a company, I'm not saying, or whatever, like, or whoever, some banana company or whatever is able to, like, is able to hire people to kill, or I don't know what it is.
I'm not an assassin. I'm not killing anybody. So, for instance, one of these operations was when Hurricane Hurricane Katrina rolled through and destroyed Puerto Rico. I had half the island, and my team brought supplies to people on the inside who, I did what I do. I got medical supplies through the military, good faith. I just asked them. I went to local hospitals, got these supplies, and we brought food. We brought medicine, clothing to people in the interior whose lives were devastated. Why
Sure,
does it
but
always
these
have to be?
big companies, I mean, these companies aren't interested necessarily in humanitarian aid. I mean, if they're bringing you on board to do some sort of a mission, it's something that benefits their interests. So what would that be like? Like, what would a private company, and how do they get away with that without that being illegal is, I guess, my question. Not that you would know that
Well,
answer, but
yeah.
that's just,
So let me finish with the Puerto Rico, because this was the last operation that I did. And
okay.
how do they benefit? Well, it's AT&T. AT&T contracted us, and they want their network restored. They want their employees not to be killed by local gangs and cartels. So you have a
Okay.
guy like me negotiate with a cartel leader. You have a guy like me go talk to the street gangs, bring them Xboxes for their kids. I'm not interested in shooting it out, banging it out with anybody in the streets. I'm interested in using my mind and trying to solve problems.
Mhm.
So
But you
this
could
is
if
it.
you had to. And I guess that's why they would send you. They want to send somebody highly trained who could, like, I mean, if we're, if all hell breaks loose and guns ablazing, then at least you could do something, right? You're not like just some average corporate suit.
No, I'm not. But here's why. Like when I'm in the room, okay, for instance, when I'm in the room with JJ Rendon, who is a geopolitical strategist, he's a smart guy. Why is it that I can throw a suit on and I can annihilate a guy like that in the room? Why can I beat him in the room? I can beat him in the room because I'm trained to do it. I'm a trained human intelligence operative. I'm trained. I have very astute. My business acumen is at a very high level. Right now, I'm a business strategist for a startup company. Like you have it. This is the part that's really difficult. The dichotomy of the soldier and the spy, right? That's putting it mildly. People don't understand that because maybe guys like me aren't supposed to exist, but we do. Like if I take an IQ test right now and I'm a pretty battle damaged dude, it's going to be pretty damn high.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I'm just
I
saying
don't
that
know.
the company, I mean, I'm not doubting your negotiation ability or your ability to make sure that things happen, with these dangerous others, negotiating with dangerous people. I'm not discounting your ability to do that. I'm just saying that if I did want to send somebody to that situation, I would also want that person to be highly trained physically, just in
Right.
case.
So let me just say this, right? And maybe this will clarify it. The overriding fundamental core belief that I have as a human being is there is no greater love than to give your life for your friends. Pretty smart guy once said that. Pretty incredible guy. Probably the most incredible person to walk the planet. Why did he say this? And how does this correlate to a soldier? It correlates more to a soldier than any other profession. I don't know you, Kim, but I would protect you and I'd die for you, right? Who else would do that? There's no greater life than to give your life for your friends. As a soldier, a guy like me has to look in the mirror when I'm in a combat zone in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria, wherever. And I have to believe that I have the courage to put my plate between me and my brothers.
Mhm.
That's my whole reason in being, right? And so when a guy like me and the men who were brave enough to do this operation with me are relegated to these mindless mercenaries who just go around and shooting people, that's insane. We're the only people who are going to protect you. There's nobody
Mhm.
else. This is not going to happen. There's a reason guys like me fight the GWAT. And it's not because we believe in what we're doing. I don't have to believe in what I'm doing to protect the man to the left and right? But what I do believe is there are certain problems in the world that should be fixed, that should be solved, because I believe people should be free at a fundamental core level.
Mhm.
And what's more is who's going to do it? It's only going to be guys like me.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, I
Totally.
1000% agree with you that I believe people should be free. And, I just to imagine a life not having that freedom. And, I think we could be more free even here in the United States, but certainly, but we do have a high level of freedom. And it's something we should not take for granted. And I do hope that everybody in the world has the same right to be free. But their idea of freedom might be different than ours. And I think that's another thing that people have to remember is that, free people might make a totally different choice on what type of economic system they want. Maybe they don't want capitalism, but they're free to choose that. Maybe they want something else. They don't care if the president switches out every 4 years. They want, those are the types of things that, we kind of insert our idea of what we think freedom looks like onto others. And that I don't think is a good idea, but I do hope for everybody to be free. So I agree with you on that. Okay, so now you're a private citizen. You're doing these jobs, these various different jobs, not killing people for companies.
No.
Although I still think that happens, and I still wonder how that's legal. But how do they get away with that? Like, how does a private company hire a mercenary basically to do a job and get away with that?
This is how. Because the Constitution does not govern corporations. And so this is the ultimate loophole that the CIA uses to go and just kill people. Period.
Yeah, okay. All right. So
Give me the
that's something
counterexample.
we got to fix at some point. Another thing,
Like what?
add that to the list. Okay, so now you're a private company. You've created now Silvercore Group, right? Is this what you've? And now you're dealing with, at this point, before you start this mission, before you're contacted to start this mission, you're helping with figuring out school shooter plans for schools, for like school districts. Like, what do they do in the event of a school shooting? They would hire somebody like you to be like, here's the plans, right? This is what you do. And you're
Yes.
busy doing that.
I'm busy
Okay.
doing that.
And then what happens? So you're sitting there, you're planning out, like, how do we keep kids safe from school shooters? And then who contacts you?
I get contacted by the head of, and he was out of the White House at that point, but he was the head of White House operations. He worked 30 years for Donald Trump, a man named Keith Schiller, who is, he's really powerful guy in the White House. I get contacted. I get pulled into an initial meeting with him. Then I get pulled into the room with his associates, group called Global Government. This group is interested in business ventures in Venezuela. That said, there will be no business ventures in Venezuela unless the country is flipped. Enter me, right? I'm pulled in. I guess, Keith Schiller, he learned about me through, who knows, maybe I'm known in the community. Maybe it was some other individual. I think he talked about some guy who told him about me. So anyways, I get pulled in the room. I initially, okay, I'll try to do this. But what you have to realize about this first meeting was the calls that were made were to Elliot. There was calls made to Elliot Abrams, to John Bolton, to Commander Fowler, who was in charge of the fleet that was launched about a year and a half later, right? And so I get pulled in this room, and it is all decided that we will try this endeavor. I will be sent.
Okay,
They send
the mission was in May of 2020, but at what point was this meeting? When did this begin?
This was 2019.
Like
this was
a year before, or just
about
year and a half before? Okay. Just so that we know how long this whole. Okay, so like we're talking January of 2020. I mean, of 2019 or something.
Yeah, something. It's
Roughly.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Okay.
Right. And so I have to first make sure that this can be done. So I go down to South America. I bring a small team, and we do a viability study. I'm given promises by the president of Venezuela through Lester Toledo, and I confirm that yes.
When you
this
say
is
the
not
president of Venezuela, you mean Guaido?
Sorry, not
Juan
the president of Venezuela. Colombia.
Okay.
My bad. President of Colombia.
Oh, Colombia. Okay.
Sorry. And so I have to do my viability study because I don't know if it's even possible. I go down there, and what I realize is that not only is it possible, but a lot of the structure that I'm going to need, and this is in way of networks, right? Because to be honest, there's the op within the op. You have the operation that everybody sees. Yeah, we've got these guys with guns and, trucks. And then you have the truth, which is what I was planning was a military style coup, where the Venezuelan military would do all the heavy lifting based on their belief that following that action against Maduro, specifically Cabello and Tariq, that there would be fair and free elections, and that the U.S. would support through humanitarian aid and strategic structure, communications, all of these things. So this is essentially what I was working on in parallel with yes, we need the guys with the guns and the trucks and stuff, right? So
Okay, so a year and a half earlier, you're getting pulled into this. You're now going down there. You're checking it out to see if this is even feasible. Can I even get this done?
right,
And
yes,
and so part of your defense is that you say the U.S. military or the U.S. intelligence agencies, the U.S. Intel, right, was involved in this. How involved would you say they were, and how do you know they were involved fully?
So I'm reading about it in FBI 302s, right? There was a secret recording that I had. Let's back up. In the very first meeting, George Betancourt and Lester Toledo were meeting with CIA. Furthermore, they had a meeting with the Colombian, a CIA agent and the head of Colombian intelligence, Rodolfo Amaya. A lot of this is in the 302s, right? I read about it. And so they, all these communications, which there's a plethora of these communications. I don't want to drill down too deep. It's kind of beyond the scope, but that's how I know. I'm reading about it. I want the classified information so I can read more about it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like these two individuals were there the entire time. There's also, communications between BNI and men in the camps when we fast forward to a year. So this is nonstop. There's no time where the CIA weren't actively collecting and trying to figure out what was going on and trying to manipulate it for the culmination, I believe, of hurting the president, among other things.
Hurting Donald Trump.
Oh, absolutely. So I think that was a great byproduct. Yeah, so I think the reason they did this, you really had three camps, right? You had the individuals who hired me. This was global governments, and this was, I guess you could say the White House insiders. These guys wanted this done. Donald Trump at the time was embattled, and he could not get the CIA to do their jobs and fulfill his intent, which was flip Venezuela. They were doing low-level operations just to kind of stave them off. This is evidenced by the fact that Mike Pompeo, he actually closed the embassy in Caracas, which made it virtually impossible for the CIA to stage a coup, even if they wanted to. They operate outside of embassies. So at this point, yeah.
Go ahead.
So at this point, yeah. So at this point, I didn't really know this. I thought, okay, everybody wants this done. I was a little confusing why the Trump's inner circle is coming to me to do it. And so I put two and two together after a certain point. But the reality is when I met with these individuals who were working with, one guy was working under Mike Pence, they wanted me to meet the president. To which I said, are you crazy? No, I'm not meeting the president. I need to give him deniability. He is the commander in chief. It's his intent that I'm following. But that's not happening. Now, these men should have known, right? One of them was a high level human intelligence operative, highest level. He should have known better. And so why did he want me to meet the president, right? So, there were red flags that I should have seen back then. That said, the other part of it is this. I mean, what was the CIA's goal in sabotaging us? Well, it's two birds, one stone. They were able to protect their drug network, Cartel de los Soles, network, because they stood them up in I think what was it, 97 or something, that the CIA stood up Cartel de los Soles. If you read the work of Gary Webb, if you watch Tiller Russell's movie The Last Narc, I mean, this is well documented. And so the remnants of this, obviously the CIA is still controlling. So, they're still trying to protect this, drug trafficking network, which is ironic now because this is, what we're targeting is the drug cartels. But the second thing the CIA got out of it was they got to hurt the president. I was affiliated with him, right? And so I think the bottom line is, I think the photo op would have sealed it. Me meeting the president, and this is why I'm never going to ask for a document. It's not happening. So fast forward.
You're saying they wanted you to meet the president so they could get that picture, so that they could then later on use that.
Yeah, that's conjecture, but I just think it's strange that such a high level humans operative wants me to get a photo op with. Doesn't make sense to me. Didn't make sense to me back then.
Okay.
My goal, like I'm American, whether it was a president on the left, whether I don't care. I mean, that's the president of the United States. He is to be afforded protections, period.
Hmm. So tell us about the day the operation went down and why it failed.
So the general that I was working with was trusted by the Venezuelans, by my assets in Venezuela who had access and placement, obviously to the leadership of Venezuela. They trusted this man. When the United States put him on a wanted poster, this destroyed us. This fostered doubt in the minds of these powerful assets that I had developed who had task maneuver units. You have to remember back then, Kim, that there was a tremendous amount of pressure on the Maduro regime back then. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of the United States coming in and doing bad things to people. And so these individuals were pliable because they, A, believed the United States was sanctioning this, and B, because this general they trusted. They did not trust Juan Guaido. They did not trust him at all, nor did they trust Leopoldo. But they trusted General Alcala. And they believed that the US was working towards this end. When Alcala was arrested, it was a signal to them for confusion and doubt.
Mm-hmm.
For our part, our boats were on the border ready to go in. And the ELN was alerted to our location, probably by DNI. My men were in a really tight position. They had to either go forward or they had to go back. If they went back, it would be going towards the ELN and probably getting killed, captured, because they're a guerrilla organization. They're violent. They don't play by rules. You can't negotiate with them. Or going forward with the operation. I choose to go forward. So I have a terrible option, and I have a second really, really bad option. I take the lesser of two evils, and we move forward. Operation fails. Maduro doesn't really have to do much. His Navy has given coordinates to our boats, GPS reporting, and they are given coordinates by CIA assets, DNI individuals who are reporting back to the U.S. Intelligence agencies. These agencies are then relay to, it was actually Cabello, our location. This information is obviously given to Padrino, and they now have our locations. So my men are killed, captured, and then we go from there. I tried to, and the movie does a good job of this. They say, I tried to, when everything was falling apart, I tried to take the civilian boat. Remember, there were 3 boats. Tried to take the civilian boat to get my men out because I was just, that's it. I got to get these guys out. And I try. Oddly enough, there was a CIA agent, I guess, in Jamaica at the time. What he was doing there, I don't know. It's conjecture, but he probably, maybe he sabotaged the boat. It was very strange how my boat just, stopped working. And, what is it, like 40 miles from the coast? Once that happens, my men are trapped. I get back to the United States. The FBI knew right away. They have an informant now, and this informant is giving them. If they know the ops damaged, offer no help. So there's something called ICD 191, Intelligence Directive 191. Basically, it says that any intelligence community individual has a duty to inform. This happened with Khashoggi when the U.S. the CIA knew that Khashoggi was going to get assassinated, and they didn't do anything about it. Well, they violated ICD 191. It's kind of a joke because CIA is nobody's going to hold them accountable for this. It's a James Clapper signed document. Same thing happened here. The FBI knew. They knew the op was damaged. They knew they were communicating with the CIA. They didn't care. They they knew there were 2 Americans in danger. They knew that I was constantly, I was trying to call my DC contacts. Keith Schiller, no answer. The other individual in, working directly for Mike Pence. So I got stonewalled and got ghosted. I was COVID, so I couldn't really fly out there and try to get them out some way. We were really just abandoned. We were lost in the battlefield. Everything goes wrong. I go in front of the world and look, I knew I was going to get annihilated. I did it for my brothers. The difference between me and, I guess, any human intelligence guy would have left for, Zimbabwe and never be heard from again. But these are my brothers, man. I need to make sure they're alive. So I had them take a photo when they were in their E&E corridor when the first boat gets destroyed, and I just wanted them to live. I had satellite communications with them up until the point where they got captured. And then once they got captured, they were on the news the news cycle was really short. It was COVID, and it was suppressed right away. It was so fast. It was in and out. You have 2 American Green Berets captured. It took 3 years to get them back, right? And then when my men got back, nobody knew about it. That was suppressed. I had journalists calling me and talking about, my 2 men like they were still in captivity and they've been out for 6 months. And so Rick Grenell, when the president gets in, he goes right over there and gets out, 8 people from Venezuela. But he was in power at the time. He could have got my guys out. And back then, I remember it. I was still contacting people in Venezuela, who were in positions, and the sentiment was that there was no interest in getting my men and making a deal for my 2 men. They wanted them there. They wanted the time to expire. And so I'm trying to make a deal, under the table with Venezuela to get my men out. America didn't want to do the deal. It took 3 years. So, and listen, at the end of the day, it's my mission, right? I accept responsibility for it, but I fought the GWOT, right? We were largely aligned during the GWOT. The CIA was giving us targeted data. They weren't trying to destroy us. Like, I'm an American. I don't care what these CIA individuals, what they're, great or good. I don't care. We're Americans and you burned us, right? So why would nobody should trust these intelligence agencies. They have their own agendas, and it is not protect America. The commander-in-chief's intent is to do a job, and that job is unpopular. Tough. Do the job. Look, a guy like me goes to war. An old general used to say, I go where I'm told and I win where I fight. Whether you like it or not, whether I believe it or not. George Washington said, the willingness of future generations to join the military is contingent on whether they were justified or not, whether the war is justified or not, is contingent on how previous soldiers' generations were treated after those wars.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, in this instance, you can demonize me all you want. I can be the bad guy. I don't care. Like, my men are soldiers. I'm a soldier. I fought for this country decades, and to just cast as a side like that is, what are you going to say to the guys who are going to fight the next World War? Oh, just do it, man. Right? No. Like, if you look how soldiers are treated, it's I think going into the military, and I used to be a huge advocate, right? I still am, but it's different for me now. Like, what do I believe? I'm still trying to work through that. I believe in people. I believe that it is worth fighting for the people to your left and right. I know Andrew Tate's big about, well, don't join these militaries because these are evil individuals, but there's good people in the world worth fighting for. There's good people in the United States worth fighting for. Yeah, there's a lot of bad people too. But ultimately, when we go to war, the guy to my left and my right, whether they're Iraqi, whether they're Jews, whether they're, Muslims, it doesn't matter. I fought shoulder to shoulder with everybody. I believe in the Son of God, man. And, but I've also seen incredible things, and I fought beside Muslim, Jew, you know, Christian. It doesn't matter in war.
Mhm.
Um,
What is
I
the one thing
just,
that, go ahead.
I just think that if you are an American, you shouldn't. This whole quiet civil war. There was obviously a point that was trying to be made with MIOP, which they wanted it big. They wanted a big. This operation has been compared to the Bay of Pigs, but it's completely different. Like look, the Bay of Pigs was initiated by the CIA. JFK didn't want to support, didn't want to give me air support. This is completely different. This was the CIA stabbing us in the back, basically giving the finger to the president of the United States, saying, you know what? Nope, we're going to stomp this down. We're going to make this public. We're going to make this fail spectacularly, and you're going to have egg on your face. Right?
Yeah, why do you think, what was their motivation? Like, what's the civil war that was going on between the CIA and Trump, and the motivation? What was the CIA's motivation, would you say?
Motivation. Well, listen, this is, if you look at the news cycle now, you have the Russia collusion hoax stuff. I think it was Tulsi Gabbard that came out and was talking about Barack Obama and how he was utilizing all these intelligence agencies to undermine the president back then. And we got caught up in that. Right. And so, then I think with the Russia collusion hoax, you had, General Flynn and Roger Stone that got caught up in that. And the reality is the Mueller report, the chief investigator in my case is one of the FBI agents from that Mueller report. Right. So
okay.
Wait a minute. Are you kidding me? The amount of connections in this story is, my ontology chart has, I don't know, probably about 100 different people on it. Pretty wild. Ontology chart is the spider webby thing with all the names and all the connections.
Yeah. So, what do you think would have been the one thing that should have happened to make the mission a success? Or do you think it was just fully doomed from the start?
I think the fact that the CIA was opposing us, there was nothing. There's nothing. Absolutely. They have too much money. They have too much time. They have some of the people that I needed were giving them information, right? Like there's just no fighting an intelligence agency that is a global force.
I guess I'm a little confused. Was the CIA behind your operation or against your operation? And if they were against your operation, then who was in the government behind your operation?
So the CIA was 100% against our operation. Okay. The CIA was use my operation to hurt the president and to protect their, drug network. I think Max Blumenthal just put out something about the Cartel de Solis being established by the CIA, right, in 1997 or whatever it was. And so it's nuanced, right? But sorry, what was your original question?
So you're almost saying, are you saying the CIA set you up to fail? Like they were involved in the planning and the execution of this whole thing, but in reality, they were setting you up to fail? Or okay, then who was in the government that actually was behind this?
They were not involved in the planning. They were involved in the setup. They were not involved in recruiting me. I was recruited by members of White House insiders, people in the president's circle. Like, so you almost think,
okay, so just so that my brain can understand this. So you're saying that this operation was actually sanctioned by the White House, people inside the White House. But the war between the CIA and the White House, the CIA was against you and like basically rooting for you to fail because that would make the White House look bad.
Not just rooting for us to fail, but actually moving pieces on the chessboard that would ensure the failure of this operation.
Okay.
And again, they had assets in the camps, which they had GPS coordinates to the men in the camps. And
why would they be against? I mean, it seems like everybody in the government is for toppling Maduro. That's like,
Sure.
again, the one thing they all seem to agree on. So why would they be against this operation, do you
It's a great
think?
question. So let's talk about it like this. Certainly, Juan Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez were making a tremendous amount of money through USAID and through government grants, 104 million. This is evidenced by the court case that's going on with Raytheon and several other companies suing Juan Guaido at the tune of billions. The USAID, funneling of money that was coming from the government and putting in the pockets of Leopoldo Lopez and Juan Guaido, Lester Toledo, and all of these guys. Why was the CIA doing it? Well, for geopolitical reasons, right? They fill their coffers through the international drug trade, which they have established. I mean, they essentially, and this is not conjecture. There's a ton of really strong reporting on this. And so they are backing this entire network of drug cartel and drug movement internationally. And so this has to be protected. One of these hubs, obviously, is Venezuela. They are working, obviously, by, with, and through whatever asset structure they're using. I don't know. There's another article, Money Badger, that was leaked to the media. It's a TSSCI project that is a DEA project. You can read more about the DEA's involvement in Venezuela and how they the things that they get up to. So this is why the CIA did it. The reason the Juan Guaido, the guy who signed the contract with me, opposed us. Well, I think for him, General Alcala was a threat, but I think the reality was just money. It was just all about the money.
So just to summarize this, to my understanding, you were contacted by high-level people in the White House in order to begin this operation. Also involved in this operation was Juan Guaido himself. We've heard the telephone call of him signing off on this, the contract, which you're saying likely, and I think it's believable to think that he wasn't doing something outside of whatever the U.S. government sanctioned, right? He's not going to oppose the U.S. government and go against the U.S. government. He's in cahoots with the U.S. government. And you're also saying the Colombian president was involved. And also that would have been somebody sanctioned by the U.S. government, that these presidents that, whether you want to call Juan Guaido a president or not, doesn't really matter. The U.S. was calling him the president, right? So he's the president of Venezuela. You got the president of Colombia. They're in on this operation. And yet the government is trying to say, nope, Jordan Goodrow was working on his own.
Right.
And that sounds kind of ridiculous.
Right, it does. So the investigative journalist who spent 9 months studying this and poring over the court documents and all the discovery, he made a statement, it's a true statement. He said, your story is impossible. Nobody's going to believe it. And he says, the only reason I believe it is because I've seen all the documents and you've never lied to me once.
Why does he think it's impossible to believe? To me, it's like so possible to believe. I mean, the U.S. government has made it no secret that they want Maduro out. And for you to have met with Juan Guaido, and did you meet with the Colombian president, or how was he involved exactly?
It was much like the Juan Guaido meeting. It was over, with Juan Guaido, it was over Zoom. With the Colombian president, it was just on a phone.
But you did speak to him yourself.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and but then later tried to deny it and called into the radio show, or is that the same phone call?
That is the same phone call.
That's the same phone call. So so then
Right.
Prior to that point, though, how was he involved before that phone call to the radio show?
So this is a great tie-in. That's a great question. So essentially, he allowed us to have camps in Colombia. Furthermore, he said that we could, we would have airfields or whatever. I can't remember it was freedom of movement throughout Colombia. And then the third thing was freedom of movement to cross the border.
Okay, well, that's what you would certainly need that. And so who did he relay that message to? That then relayed it to you?
No, this was, I heard this from the horse's mouth. This was the phone call and the...
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, this was from him directly, him saying, yeah, you can definitely do, okay.
Right.
All right, so...
Is he calling in right now?
Okay, so... so I don't know why this is not believable. I mean, why would the investigative journalist that you're talking about say that this is not believable? It's I mean, I don't, it would be unbelievable for you to have all of this access and everything without government help.
Right. It's impossible.
That part to me would be more unbelievable, that you just worked on your own. That actually is more unbelievable to me, to my brain, which I think is logical. That
Right.
the U.S. I mean, how would you get all of the, yeah, like the ability to cross borders, the intel, access to presidents? Like, you need to be at some people in the high level parts of the government would need to be helping you out. The
Absolutely.
problem is what they're trying to, what they're basically, what you're saying with the Civil War aspect is there might have been people inside of the government that were absolutely helping you and giving you this information, and they were involved. But what the question is then, were they doing it? Were they sanctioned to do it by the government? Were they working on behalf of the government, or were they rogue actors sabotaging the government, which again is also highly believable for Trump's first term. People were bragging about this in the Washington Post, saying like, I'm resisting the government, I'm resisting Trump at every turn, and I'm undermining him, and we're undermining him. And, people were undermining the government all the time. So so the question is whether or not, and it really, I think, is kind of irrelevant. It should be irrelevant anyway, whether or not these actors in the White House or whoever was involved, whether or not they were actually state sanctioned, or if they were rogue actors undermining and rebelling against the government, right? Doing what they wanted to do, going rogue. But even if they were going rogue, what does that matter? I mean, for all you knew is that they were working on behalf of the government and they were giving you directives, and the government wanted deniable plausibility. And so they do it by, rather than the CIA or actual, people serving in the military right then, Green Berets serving in the military right then, you get the retired ones to go do it, right? I mean, that allows for plausible deniability.
Right.
Because if it fails, you don't want to be a pig's issue, right? Like,
right.
That's what you want to have. You want to be able to say when it fails, if it fails, you want to be able to say, well, this Jordan guy just did it on his own. I don't know. Sometimes people do things, they do wild things. I mean, that sounds like the story. I mean, it sounds like that's what they've done is they set it up to where, okay, what if this goes wrong? And that makes sense also. Like if you're the government, if you're from the government's position, it makes sense that you're like, okay, look, we want to do this coup, but if it fails, this is going to be bad. And we know that coups often fail, it's hit or miss whether or not they succeed. So how are we going to insulate ourselves if this fails? Well, I mean, you get a bunch of scapegoats. I mean, that this is, you set it up in the event. I mean, that's what a good planner would actually do, right? I mean, they're actually doing their job by doing this. Okay, how do we deny when this thing fails? Because we don't want this to be like super embarrassing. And we don't want the U.S. government to look bad. We don't want Trump to look weak, or we don't want, or whatever whatever it is in their thinking, in their mind. So yeah, I mean, to me, this sounds like a totally, completely plausible, believable story that the government sanctioned this in one way or another. You were involved, you were doing this, and it didn't work out, it failed, and now they're scapegoating you. That sounds reasonable to me.
Right.
Because that's actually everybody kind of doing their job. I mean, it's like everybody did their job. That's the problem. The problem for you is everybody did, everybody did their job that they thought they needed to do, whatever that job was. And the people that planned it were like, we need a scapegoat just in case this fails. And you're like, I'm doing my job, given the resources and doing what I need to do, and talking to presidents that are letting me cross their borders, and talking to other presidents signing off on contracts. Like, I'm doing what I need to do to make sure this is like, it just seems like, so then what? Now
I think that the CIA did not do their job. I think that,
but they think they did. I mean, even from their perspective, they're like, we did our job. Like, we're in a civil war with the White House, and we did our job.
But they violated their own directives. Is the CIA beholden to the White House? Are they beholden to the American people, or are they just some?
No, they're not anymore. I mean, they should be.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's like Americans going after Americans. And it's like so I don't think they did their job. I think what they did was treasonous. I absolutely do. I think
they do it all the time. But sure, but in their minds, with how rogue that agency's gone, I mean, in my opinion, it should be shut down. But then it's like, what's the point? They'll just pop up a new one and just label it something different. It's the same thing. But clearly, this agency operates outside of the realm of Constitution, outside of the realm of who they're supposed to be answering to, at the directive and whatever the president wants. They have shadow organizations inside, and like you said, Skunk Works. There's like all these other operations and organizations that, it's like, how do we have $1 trillion of the Pentagon budget disappear? Where did that money go? Clearly to black ops, right? Shadow ops that nobody knows about, right? So there's all these other players in organizations, and they don't operate inside of the Constitution. They don't operate within a normal chain of command. That is the biggest problem with these shadowy intel organizations. But so from that perspective, though, yes, you're right, it's treason. But from their perspective, they're like, we're just doing our job the way we always do our job, which is we just do what we want. And this is what we want. And we just did it. So, from that angle, everybody did their job, unfortunately, or unfortunately. So the question then is, how do you battle that in court? Like, how do you prove it and battle it and be like, yeah, I just was doing what the government basically sanctioned me to do?
Well, this is the fight, right? So this is the truly terrible thing about the government, is that they have the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice I think, like, in my opinion, if there is any kind of intelligence agency, anything, these cases should just be dismissed, or all of the classified information should be revealed. I don't think the CIA should get to withhold it for national security, because let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, none of that stuff's national security. It's CIA security. You're protecting yourself.
Right. Right.
The recruitment in the CIA, like, the way I see it is this: they have so much safety, so many safety nets. You don't have to be a very, very good at your job to be in the CIA. You just don't. You can screw up 1 trillion things and it'll never fall back on you. And so I think that they really need to take a look at the recruitment, but I kind of prefer what you said, just disband them. And then maybe use U.S. military intelligence agencies that would actually, put Americans first. There was actually, this is a side note, the Colombian Intelligence Service went to the AOB in Bogota when this happened, when everything's falling apart, and they asked a green suiter PSYOPs guy to do a PSYOP against me. And the green suiter refused. He said, we don't do that against American citizens. This is the difference between a soldier and some CIA guy who's been trained to, there is no patriotism. You have to be, your allegiance has to be the CIA or whatever. That's the difference. Which is
also,
unfortunate.
they're like, practically every agent in the CIA has to be a sociopath. I mean, you kind of have to be, right? In order to, I'm not talking about the analysts, but the ops, you kind of have to be a sociopath, because you have to lie all the time about who you are, when you're doing these operations. Sometimes they have second families in other countries. Like, I mean, all kinds of weird stuff goes on. You have to be a world-class actor, but it's not just acting for a movie. It's acting in real life, which I think requires a certain personality type and traits that are a bit devoid of normal humanity. And so if you're that type of person and you believe, then why not spy on everybody? I mean, you're not going to stop at U.S. citizens. You're going to be like, no, I got to spy on everybody. And I'm going to do whatever against everybody's the enemy from within or whatever. I know Pete Hegseth said that, but still it's that same mentality.
I think that's very true of a lot of human intelligence guys. But I can honestly say that I did human intelligence in several theaters. Green Berets, we start out from the Q course doing human intelligence, learning human intelligence. I can honestly say that you do not have to be a liar to be successful in the human intelligence realm. You don't have to. You can be on the level. I think if you're
going to be a spy, though, I think that's a bit different. If you're going to be a spy.
Sure, perhaps, but you can certainly conduct yourself with a certain level of ethics and morality that was not displayed in certainly this operation.
Sure.
There was no quarter, and we're Americans. They didn't have to. They could have helped get my guys out. They knew, the FBI knew that I was trying to get my guys out. They knew that boat broke. There was a destroyer group in the Caribbean at that time. They could have easily worked by with and through the Colombians to help get my guy. They didn't. They let it unfold. which again is a violation of their own directives, ICD
Yeah.
91. But who cares, right? It's just collateral damage for these boys. So
Unfortunately, you're not the first, I don't think, and you won't be the last either. As far as being the scapegoat or the patsy or the whatever. In this particular instance, the scapegoat. But, Jordan, I wish you the best. Your court case is coming up pretty quickly. The court date is for February, so it's coming up. I hope, and you're right. The biggest challenge is fighting classified information. That's the biggest challenge, because they do this all the time for all kinds of things. Like even when they want to label somebody a terrorist, we say this person's a terrorist. Well, where's the information? Oh, it's classified. We can't show you exactly what they did that makes us think they're a terrorist. And this person's being accused, and there's really no defense when they say it's classified. We can't show you. And we see this all the time in these court cases, and it's. That's the biggest challenge. And that's what I'm saying. Like fighting the government is so difficult because they just shield themselves, or when they release information, they redact it so heavily. It's just, your printer runs out of ink trying to print off 2 pages of whatever they've just released that they supposedly, released out there for public consumption.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, you have to, it's like I said before, I believe in people, and I still believe there's good people. There's good judges, there's good juries, there's good people in the juries to see through it. It's pretty obvious what's going on, especially in these modern times when it's right in our faces. The big thing for me is staying out of jail, right? I mean, they have labeled on your first summary, they labeled me a flight risk, which is laughable. I've been here for a year and a half. I can leave and I can take off, and I didn't. I'm here. I want the truth. I want to know what happened. Those 8 Venezuelan guys who died deserve it. My 2 men deserve it. We all deserve it. My co-defendant, who is an incredibly brave woman, who is 10 times the woman who got the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, this is a woman who gave everything to try to liberate her country. And she is right beside me facing this, right? We want the truth. I'm here. I want the truth. Let's go. Give me the classified information. If you have nothing to hide, let's see it.
Jordan, best of luck to you. Yes. Best of luck to you. Where should people, is there anywhere where people should go to? I mean, I think the movie was pretty good in explaining a lot of stuff, but you're saying that you didn't like the Men of War movie because the way it portrayed you is just like a war guy, like a just military, like just guns, that's it.
Right, guns,
that is kind of how they portrayed you.
I think it's worth watching because it's like a brochure to this, but the critical pieces that needed to be explained, it fell short a little bit. But I do think it's worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, it explains it in kind of a dramatic way also, and goes into a bit more detail about things. And so, but what else would you like people? Where should they go to follow you or learn more about the story? Or
I think probably I mean, I'm on Twitter or on X, which is just first name, middle initial, last name.
We have your link down below for X.
Wow, amazing! And I have a Instagram.
Okay, all right.
I think that.
Well, Jordan, thanks for being here and sharing your story. I wish you the best of luck in fighting the government on this and their narrative. And, it's your story is just like, I think, another showcasing of how our government has just gone so rogue and they're out of control, especially with these operations. They're just, and I think a lot of, many that watch this show and myself, one of our biggest frustrations is the U.S. government continuing to do things without the permission of the American people. And they just really don't think they need it. They really think they can kind of do anything they want. And this is another showcasing of that, I think. So, again, Jordan, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you telling your story, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iversen Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.